What's up, everyone, and welcome back to the Hidden File Pod. Today we're diving into the conspiracy theory that's been making side-eye the government since the 80s. And honestly, the 80s gave us plenty of reasons to side-eye everything. So today's question on the pod is, did the CIA actually help cause the crack epidemic in the United States? Sounds dramatic, right? But something your uncle yells after 2 rums and a coke. Sorry, did I just say that? Like something your uncle yells about after 2 rums and a coke. But here's the thing, this theory didn't come out of nowhere. It came from real investigative reporting, real government secrecy, real declassified documents, and of course, real trauma in Black communities who lived through this era. So today we're breaking it down, podcast style, into a trip back to the 80s, what the conspiracy actually claims, the evidence that supports it, and the evidence, of course, that doesn't, and the final group verdict. I'm Sajida, and I've got my amazing co-host with me.
Hey everyone, I'm Jaden.
I'm Alyssa, and I'm ready for drama, receipts, and a splash of Cold War chaos.
Hi, I'm Veronica, and if we're talking government scandals, I'm already seated.
So before we get started, I just wanted to explain why this theory stuck on for so long, because the sources behind it actually gave people reasons to pay attention. When we talk about investigative reporting, we mean journalists who spend years connecting information from court records, interviews, and leaked documents. They weren't guessing, they were building timelines based on what people said, and what officials denied, and what evidence actually surfaced. Then there's government secrecy. A lot of decisions from this era were made behind closed doors, with very little transparency. And whenever you have secrecy, especially during major crises, people naturally start asking questions. Even small details that weren't explained properly added to the feeling that something was obviously left behind. And in the declassified documents, which came out years later and show that certain warnings, reports, or allegations weren't handled properly. Even if they didn't confirm the conspiracy directly, they made people wonder why so much information was ignored or never followed up on. And finally, you can't separate any of this from the real harm experience in Black communities. People were dealing with violence, addiction, over-policing, and lack of support. So when stories started connecting foreign policy and drug trafficking to what was happening at home, communities that lived through it weren't very surprised. They already felt the consequences daily. All of these pieces, the reporting, the secrecy, the documents, and the lived experiences built the foundation for this conspiracy. And that's why people still talk about it today. All right, enough of me. Jaden, take us back in time.
All right, guys. Let's imagine the late 70s and early 80s. Big hair, neon tracksuits, and an economy that was absolutely not serving. In major U.S. cities, especially predominantly Black neighborhoods, life was already in crisis mode. Here's what was going down. Deindustrialization, where factories were closing and jobs were starting to disappear. Redlining, where Black families trapped in underfunded neighborhoods. Urban flight, where middle-class families were leaving and tax bases started to collapse. Cuts to social programs which support systems which were vanished. Aggressive policing, which was more punishment with less prevention. So basically, communities were struggling before crack ever arrived. Now, let's jump to Central America, where the U.S. was fighting the Cold War like it was a personal rivalry. If someone sneezed in Spanish, the U.S. believed communism was spreading. In Nicaragua, a left-wing group called the Sandinistas rose to power. The U.S. freaked out and began secretly supporting a rebel group known as the Contras. Here's where things get a little messy, because this isn't conspiracy, this is documented history. So according to the CIA's own Inspector General report, the U.S. Department of Justice review, and the National Security Archive, some people connected to the Contras were involved in cocaine trafficking. And here's the kicker. The CIA officials knew about these allegations, and in many cases, they just didn't report them. Because their mindset was, stop communism first, ask questions later. At the same time, crack cocaine was about to explode in major U.S. cities. So you've got urban communities already under massive pressure, cocaine traffickers connected to U.S.-backed rebels, CIA secrecy, and zero accountability for it. That overlap is where the conspiracy was born.
So the conspiracy basically comes in 2 flavors, mild and spicy. The mild version is the indirect conspiracy. This version, the CIA didn't bring crack to America, but they supported or worked with people who were smuggling cocaine and ignored the drug trafficking because they needed funding and allies. Meaning the cocaine flowed, the CIA looked the other way, and that cocaine eventually became crack. Now, not the CIA cooked crack in the basement, but the CIA ignored the coke pipeline. The spicy version is the direct conspiracy. This one's cinematic. It claims the CIA intentionally allowed crack to spread, specifically in black neighborhoods, for political and racial reasons, or to secretly fund the Contra War. Basically, the CIA planned the crack epidemic. This exploded after journalist Gary Webb published his 1996 Dark Alliance articles linking LA drug dealers to Contra-connected traffickers. The public freaked, government freaked, and the media tried to bury Webb. It was a whole thing. All right, Sujita, give us the goods. Evidence time.
Okay, let's get into the juicy part. What evidence actually supports this theory? And honestly, it's way more. It's more than just most conspiracy theories get. Contra-linked traffickers did traffic cocaine. Sorry, let me say that again. Contra-linked traffickers did traffic cocaine. I said did, not did not. Documents from the CIA, DOJ, and National Security Archive confirm it. Not rumors, but facts. People like Norman Meneses and Danilo Blandin were key cocaine traffickers linked to Contra supporters. The CIA knew and didn't shut it down. The CIA Inspector General admitted they received reports about the traffickers, and they didn't always notify the DEA. They didn't fully investigate, and they did prioritize the Contras over stopping drug smuggling. Drug money did support the Contras, meaning several investigations showed this connection, that war is expensive and apparently so is ignoring morals. The cocaine from these networks entered the US market, especially in Los Angeles, the same area that later became the epicenter of the early crack epidemic. Moving on, the government's past behavior made the theory believable. COINTELPRO, secret wars, civil rights surveillance, oh my goodness, the list can go on. Gary Webb's reporting wasn't totally wrong. Mainstream media roasted him in the 90s, but decades later, declassified documents confirmed key parts of his findings. So the evidence for the conspiracy isn't that the CIA intentionally plotted this, but that they worked with traffickers, ignored cocaine smuggling, indirectly contributed to conditions that made the epidemic possible. Now, Veronica, it's your turn to rescue the CIA's reputation, or at least try to.
All right, let's be fair to the government. I mean, not too fair. They don't deserve that, but somewhat fair. There is substantial evidence that the CIA didn't intentionally cause the crack epidemic. One, there was multiple major investigations found no proof of intentional involvement. This includes the US Senate, the DOJ, the CIA Inspector General. They all found no evidence the CIA planned, directed, or intentionally caused the epidemic. Two, crack didn't originate from one source. Drug market research shows crack emerged independently in different cities at different times. The LA network wasn't the sole source. Economics explain the explosion. Let's face it, crack was cheap, it was easy to produce, easy to transport, massively profitable, and extremely addictive. Drug markets respond to profit, not to CIA memos. Not to mention, there was no whistleblowers has ever been confirmed the conspiracy. And we live in a world where everything leaks. Let's be honest, if the CIA did do this, someone would have talked. This is the same country where the Pentagon Papers leaked, Watergate leaked, the NSA mass surveillance leaked. Yet no former agent, trafficker, politician, or Contra financier has produced a memo, a recording, a documentation, or credible testimony confirming a CIA crack operation. If a government secret stays quiet for 4 decades, it probably wasn't a real operation because someone would have sung like a canary for fame, money, immunity, or a Netflix documentary. Also, domestic policies created more damage than foreign policies. The war on drugs, harsh crack sentencing, mandatory minimums, unequal treatment, did far more harm than any CIA alleged involvement. So while the CIA was shady, the intentional plot theory just doesn't hold up. All right, Jaden, explain why people still believe this.
All right, so people would still probably believe this because communities were completely devastated and then they're just completely ignored.
Also, the government had a long resume of oops, we accidentally destabilized another country.
And the sentencing laws for crack versus powder cocaine was widely unequal, straight up racist in effect.
So even if the conspiracy wasn't literally true, the lived experience it made it feel true.
All right, guys. So we said that we don't believe it was true, but we also believe it's more on the 50-50 side. We knew the CIA was involved, but they weren't like 100% involved. They weren't like completely allowing it. But yes, they did allow the flow of cocaine into the country to help fund the war in Nicaragua. And some of the names that were mentioned were like Norwin Menez and Danilo Blandin. These were people that helped the flow of cocaine from Mexico and those the southern countries bring cocaine into the U.S. These people were also like the show I've watched. It's called Snowfall. It's about the crack epidemic in the 80s. There's a character named Teddy McDonald. He is a CIA agent who helps fund the war and his main job for the CIA is to bring cocaine from countries to the U.S. to generate revenue so that the U.S. can help fund the war in Nicaragua. And yeah, it's pretty messed up, right?
That's kind of
Like
messed
to
up,
think
yeah.
our own government is the government is screwing over people and like destroying families.
I'm not surprised by the CIA, but I'm surprised that they would do something to put a war together.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm not too surprised.
And
about
you know
that.
what? One wild fact that I found while I was going through all these documents, that the CIA was forced to investigate itself because of this theory. So they already knew about everything. They already knew everything.
They investigated themselves.
Yes, because of this theory. Because
how is that possible?
Right.
because it came about, and I guess it was part of their work.
Yeah. So they just could tell the public, oh, we
So
investigated.
they knew about it. Obviously,
Yeah.
they
We
knew everything, but
investigated
we
it.
don't know anything. Because
That's just wrong. Yeah. It ruined many cities, ruined many people's lives. The crack epidemic was real, and it's still a big problem to this day. The drugs.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And the craziest part is the government debunked the main claim about the theory, but confirmed enough side details about this epidemic to keep everyone suspicious. So everyone was still on their toes trying to figure out what was going on, but they didn't deny it. The government didn't deny it. So it's one of those conspiracies that isn't totally like wrong or totally right. It's like it's a weird place in the middle.
Yeah. So it's hard to be on one side or another. Anything else?
There's a lot of stuff that I went through, but I think we've covered majority of the important pieces and the history of what was going on. And I feel like the early crack laws, they were created super quickly. So before anyone even understood the drug, it ended up being way harsher than the powder cocaine laws.
Mm-hmm.
So the imbalance of them, it made the whole like situation feel unfair from the beginning for everyone.
Plus, too, when it came to that drug, it wasn't just like all cocaine. They used a lot of like chemicals in it, which is why you would get high very quickly.
Yeah.
So it became so addictive, and that's why it was so cheap to make, because you put a little bit of cocaine and a lot of
Bleach, whatever it is.
Yeah.
So when you put all of it together, the rapid spread, the Cold War focus, and the rushed creation of these laws that they were doing, and obviously lack of trust in between all these communities, it makes sense that this conspiracy stuck around for a long time.
Yeah. Also, though, to build on to what you were saying about how the laws of crack just immediately emerged and how they're severely more harsh than cocaine laws, I think it's because in the 80s, let's be honest, cocaine was really big, right? Like every lot of people were doing it. So it was like I don't want to say it, but it was kind of like weed nowadays. Like a lot of people were doing it, right? But once crack came in, it started ruining people's lives. Like it completely destroyed it. Once you did it once, you're done. You're hooked on. So I feel like that's why the laws became 10 times more harsh, because the government knew how bad it was for you.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
So here's our final verdict from our entire conversation.
So we don't think the CIA didn't intentionally create the crack epidemic.
But yes, the CIA ignored cocaine trafficking when it benefited their foreign policy.
And yes, their decisions indirectly helped create the conditions for the crisis.
So the conspiracy itself isn't completely true, but I'm not saying it's completely false either. But absolutely, it did root in real history and real harm.
And honestly, the fact that the CIA could be involved tells you everything you need to know.
Well, thanks for listening. And remember, if the government denies something, that just means keep digging.
Thanks for
tuning in.